Jay here for Stretford Paddock. This is the Tier 1 Transfer Podcast. Joining me from Sky Sports is Dharmesh Sheth. Dharmesh, good to chat to you again. I think the last time I spoke to you, I was in a hotel room in San Diego. How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm still in the same place, in my flat in northwest London. But it was like about 1:30 in the morning for you, wasn't it? You've been on a big night out.
Yeah, I was full of Pepsi Max cherry. I was still, I was on a caffeine high. I think when we started, by the end, I was like, yeah, it was getting on. But as always, appreciate you chatting to us. There's been quite a bit of movement actually during the transfer window so far from Manchester United. We've actually been getting a few deals done. One deal that hasn't been done, that has been linked with Manchester United, has been a move for Sofyan Amrabat from Fiorentina. What's the latest with that? Are United still looking to make that deal happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's definitely a player of interest. He's a player that Erik ten Hag likes. He's a player that the club like. Fiorentina are well aware of Manchester United's interest. He's only got 2 years left on his contract. It's 1 year left plus the option of a further year. And I think United are ready to do a deal for Sofyan Amrabat, but it looks like it's going to depend on departures. So, once the Højlund deal had gone through, United had spent, close to £175 million plus, if you incorporate all of the add-ons on three players in Onana, in Mason Mount, and in Rasmus Højlund. And the information that I got then was that the bulk of the incoming business was done. So it wasn't all of the incoming business was done. The bulk of it had been done. And the focus then was on departures. But there is definitely an eye on trying to get this deal for Amrabat done. Ten Hag's managed him before at Utrecht, has, really spoken highly of the player. Everybody saw how good he was during the World Cup for Morocco. And I think the more and more people talk about a potential deal for Amrabat, the more and more they can see how he would fit in to United and how good an addition he would be to that squad ahead of the new season. It just depends now whether United can sort out some of these departures, because I think the main focus now is to do that for them to allow to get this deal done for Amrabat.
Well, there's a lot of departures to talk about, potential departures to talk about. There's a bit of a list, so we'll go through it. I just want to start with, I know the McTominay and the Maguire ones are doing the rounds, and we'll get to them in a minute. Just want to ask about Fred. What's the latest with Fred? Because there was this talk, well, he didn't go on the pre-season tour, because I think the club said it was something to do with a personal reason, and then he was going to join later. He didn't. Now there's obviously been links with various clubs. What can you tell us about Fred and his potential move away from Manchester United?
Look, even before any of the pre-season games had started, there was talk of Fred potentially leaving, because look, into his 30s and he is into the final year of his contract at Manchester United. There doesn't seem to be any movement on extending a deal. And you've got to ask the question, if United did, how long would they potentially give Fred? Could it be a year or something? And Fred is probably thinking, I could go elsewhere and probably get longer term security for my career and get a longer deal somewhere else. As I mentioned, into the final year, that's why this has come to a head just now. We understand that United are listening to offers for him. I've mentioned Amrabat. He could be one of the players that could make way in the squad, but also, to get some money into the coffers as well to fund a potential move for Amrabat. You mentioned the pre-season. He hasn't actually played since coming off the bench against Lyon. That was way back on July the 19th. And as you said, personal issues for the first part of the tour. And then the later in that tour it went, we were still wondering, well, where is he? He's supposed to join up. And then by the time it got to the point where there was still a few days of the tour left, but only one game left, I think it was the Borussia Dortmund game, it was, I think, decided that it was not worth Fred coming all the way out for potentially coming off the bench against Dortmund and then going all the way back. So it was decided that, Fred wasn't going to play any part in that tour at all. There's been lots of interest in him. Galatasaray were pushing really hard to try and sign Fred. But, I mean, two big factors that didn't make that deal happen were the fee and the personal terms, which are two massive factors in any kind of transfer. But Galatasaray couldn't meet the valuation that Manchester United wanted. And I don't think the personal terms were to Fred's liking. There is interest, though, from Fulham. Now, I mentioned this really early in this transfer window that Fulham had held initial talks with United. And at the time, they were interested, but not at the prices that were being quoted. And I said at the time that this would be one to watch later in the window, because the later in the window it gets, if Fred remains a United player and they still want to see him leave the club, then there's always that option for a buying club, for example, Fulham, to spot an opportunity to potentially get him for less than what he would have gone for at the start of the window. So Fulham still retain an interest in him. And the latest information I have on that is that they're expected to reopen talks with United at some stage to try and sort out a deal for Fred. We think that Marco Silva is a big fan of Fred, really likes him, and I think he'd want him to come into the squad. I think at the start of the window, because there's lots of talk about João Palhinha potentially leaving as well, and I think they wanted to reinforce that midfield. As it stands, Palhinha is not going anywhere, but that's predominantly to do with the valuation that Fulham have put on him, but also the fact that he suffered quite a serious shoulder injury in pre-season. So that one's sort of at a deadlock at the moment. West Ham were really, really interested in signing him, but there was a massive gap in valuation. But with all of that in mind, I think Fulham still want to reinforce in that area. So that is still one to watch. I know there's only just a little over 3 weeks to go in the window, but definitely Fulham have got a long-standing interest in him.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me, that move for Fred to go to Fulham. Obviously, I know it's a completely different player, but Andreas Pereira went there and did very well. Yeah. Did very well at Fulham, and it was good to see as well. And if Fred does go to Fulham, I'm sure a lot of United fans, myself included, will wish him well. Donny van der Beek to Sociedad. I get the impression that there's something happening here with this. I don't know, it just seems to be like they're interested in him. He doesn't seem like he's got much of a future at Manchester United, if we're being brutally honest. And this move kind of makes a lot of sense.
It's such a shame, isn't it? With all the United fans that I speak to were really excited when Donny van der Beek joined. Didn't really get the opportunities in his first season. He actually came off the bench in his first game, if I recall, and scored on his debut, didn't he, against Crystal Palace in that defeat? And people thought, right, that's the one positive that's come out of that game. So let's see what Van der Beek can do. But it just didn't happen for him. The style of play, I guess, was a bit of a factor for him, and he wasn't given that run in the team that he probably wanted. And I think the Everton loan move that didn't work either, because I think United's intention then was probably to send him to potentially a Spanish club at the time, only because if he was to go on loan, he would still have enough time on his contract, or for them to maintain a big transfer fee for him if he performed well elsewhere. And I think the feeling was at the time that he was more likely to perform well if he was to go to La Liga, where the pace of the game was slightly different compared to staying in the Premier League. He went to Everton and it didn't work out for him there either. I don't think he got that run in the team that he probably wanted. He's had injury problems. Of course, there was that big injury that he had last season when a lot of United fans thought, right, Erik ten Hag is here. He knows Donny van der Beek. This is a match made in heaven now. We're finally going to see the best of Donny van der Beek, but it's just not working. And I think everyone's kind of accepted that at United, and reluctantly, I guess, they're in talks with other clubs, but it is now looking, not advanced, but the talks are ongoing now with Real Sociedad over every kind of deal. I think United would want to do a permanent deal and recoup as much of what was, I think, was £40 million that they paid. They're not going to get that. But potentially a loan with an option, and an option that, one of those ones that turns into an obligation if he has a certain number of appearances. So I think that's where we stand with Donny van der Beek at the moment. And if United can do deals for both Fred and Van der Beek, going back to what you asked me right at the start, I think it would be much easier for them to sanction that deal for Sofian Amrabat.
Well, hopefully a deal can be, like you said. I feel for Donny van der Beek, because when Erik ten Hag came in, that looked like, okay, this is a good opportunity for you, because it's your former Ajax manager, the manager you'd obviously had a lot of success with, can maybe fit into the style a little bit better. And then he got that injury, didn't he? He had, I think it was against Bournemouth, where he got injured and was basically out for the rest of the season. And that seemed like his last chance. Yeah. So, I do feel for the kid, because he's a good player. It's just not, like you said, for all the reasons you've listed there, it's just not worked out for him at Manchester United. We'll talk about Maguire and McTominay. I'll get to McTominay in a minute. Harry Maguire, there was a bid, I think. Just give us an update on that, because I think it was West Ham was sort of came in with a bid and it wasn't enough, and they're going to have to come back with a bigger one. What's the latest with that?
Yeah, I mean, this one, I think that it's ongoing at the moment. West Ham have gone in with a bid of around £30 million. This was after they had a bid last month rejected for £20 million. It should be said here that United aren't actively pushing Harry Maguire out of the door. If Harry Maguire went to Eric Ten Hag and said, I'm going to stay here, I'm under contract, and I'm going to fight for my place, I don't think Eric Ten Hag would have a huge problem with it, because he likes that kind of attitude from his players. He only wants players who want to stay there, and if they're not in the team, to fight for their place. But I think Harry Maguire is, he's well aware of what happened last season. It seems that Rafael Varane and Lisandro Martinez are locked in when they're fit as the first choice partnership. And then you would have thought that Harry Maguire would have been the next player to come in, when there are injuries with either of those two. But that wasn't the case. And I think that's probably swayed Maguire a little bit, because, you had Victor Lindelof coming in, and even Luke Shaw, who was a left back, coming in to play into the central defence ahead of Maguire. So with that in mind, and with the Euros coming up at the end of the season, I think it's something that Harry Maguire is going to have to think about. We don't think the 30 million bid has been accepted, but I don't think it's too far away from what Manchester United perceive to be fair market value for Harry Maguire, because that's what they're after, fair market value. 20 million was dismissed out of hand because it was just far too low a figure. And even if the fee is agreed, it should be said here, it's not a guarantee that the deal will be done, because the wages are going to be a factor as well. We know that Harry Maguire will be on big wages. Of course, he was the captain at the club as well. And that's where West Ham are going to need to do a little bit more discussion, as well as trying to agree a fee with Manchester United. But that one we think is ongoing. £30 million bid in, probably just a little bit less than what United would be after. But you know how these deals can work, Jay, when if to get to a certain figure, it doesn't necessarily have to be the guaranteed figure that the selling club is after, but in performance-related add-ons, and probably achievable performance-related add-ons to get that deal over the line.
Can you see him going there? Can you see the player being willing to go? You mentioned there's even if the fee's agreed, because it's a bit of a funny one with Harry Maguire. I still think Harry Maguire walks into a lot of Premier League teams. I do.
Yeah.
I think there's this sort of misconception that, because he's not good enough for United, a team that finished third, don't forget, that he's not good enough for anyone. And I think there's a lot of Premier League teams that would have him. I just wonder whether he's looking at it and going, West Ham, obviously won the Europa Conference League, but in terms of the Premier League, they're not that high up. Maybe I can do a bit better. Do you think he could be sort of willing to go there if the fees and the wages and everything was all right?
Two things I would say is, when you hear about clubs going in for players and making bids, it's usually because they've got some kind of encouragement that the player is potentially open to making the move, or maybe even listening to what they have to say. Because I know people almost dress this up as tapping up. I don't think it is tapping up in today's football, because sometimes if a club is willing to allow a player to go, they may even give permission. We don't know. We're not privy to all of those kind of details that go on behind the scenes, but they may give the representatives of a player the permission to go and speak to a number of clubs. Because if they are willing to let a player go, they want to do that deal pretty quickly, especially if they want to bring somebody else in. So if, for example, a player's representatives are talking to clubs and they're getting positive feedback from those particular clubs, and they're getting some sort of ballpark figure that would be acceptable with regard to wages and personal terms, they can then go back to the clubs and say, look, this is something potentially that could happen. So you wouldn't be wasting your time if you started a bidding process. Because very, very rarely do you see clubs go in for players and then make one bid and then just say, rejected, right, we're not going to go back in. Because normally they've been getting the encouragement that the player would want to join. And if they want to bring that player in, they will stay in the dealing over that deal. So I'm not saying that that's what's happened in this case, but the fact that West Ham United made a £20 million bid And there was a lot of public talk going round saying they're moving on to other targets and they're moving away from Harry Maguire. And yet they've come back with another bid worth £30 million. The noises that you can deduce from that is potentially the player could be open to going to West Ham. The second thing I'd say is, you mentioned the Conference League that they won last season. It gets them into the Europa League this season. So they're going to be playing European football. They've got a great stadium with 60,000 fans. So, as the song goes, West Ham are massive everywhere they go. That's what they'll believe. But in all seriousness, they're a big club. And you could see that being potentially a good fit for Harry Maguire and West Ham.
No, listen, I get your point about West Ham and the side of the club. And yeah, that is a valid point. I just wondered whether somebody might look at it and go, you know what, maybe I can go a little bit higher in terms of clubs at the table. But West Ham, big club, and also there's like you said, there's the added thing about England as well. He's got to look at the England situation. So first,
what, Jay, I'm sure he could go higher. Yeah, he could play Champions League football. The only issue is if you're talking about English clubs, how many of those top 4 clubs actually need to recruit in that area? That's the question. And then you're looking at, a couple of the big clubs like, Manchester City. That move probably isn't going to happen, even if you take away the number of central defenders that Manchester City have got. It should be said, though, that, City were actually trying to sign him when Manchester United actually ended up signing him. So Arsenal, they seem to be quite full in those positions as well. So it's one of those situations where we're not talking about Harry Maguire's quality. We know he's got qualities, and England international. He's, Gareth Southgate always picks him, even when he wasn't getting too much game time. I just wonder whether this time there's been a conversation with Gareth Southgate to, maybe you need to play a little bit more to ensure that you're not only in the squad for the Euros, but in the team as well.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Scott McTominay is another player that's been linked with a move. What's happening with him? Because again, I've heard there's been figures bandied around 30 million. What can you tell us about Scott McTominay leaving Manchester United potentially? Again, potentially.
Yeah, as far as publicly, media-wise goes, it moved quite quickly for us yesterday, because at the start of the day, we were talking about West Ham agreeing a deal for Edson Alvarez. And I got the information at that time that they were going to push for Maguire and McTominay. And before I knew it, it was, right, they've made a bid for Maguire. And it's almost like they're in talks now, but they're also using those talks to talk about McTominay. And before you knew it, it was 30 million has gone in for Maguire, 30 million has gone in for McTominay. The kind of information I'm getting now, which I need to confirm at this stage, I've just sent a couple of texts out with regard to this. It seems, as I mentioned before, that the Maguire one, they're closer to the valuation, whereas with the McTominay one, I think they're a little bit further away. And that's why I was told that while they're still in for McTominay and while they'll still engage in talks with Manchester United over McTominay, they are looking at other options as well at West Ham. And they've had a long-standing interest in James Ward-Prowse. And like I said about Maguire before and McTominay, they're not pushing these players out. And the McTominay one seems to be a slightly different situation to Maguire, because if you look at the central defensive situation that United have just now, with Maguire being quite far down the pecking order, and couple that with the fact that Johnny Evans potentially could get a more permanent deal at United, is that going to push Harry Maguire further down the pecking order? Or is the Johnny Evans potential deal dependent on someone like Harry Maguire leaving? When you look at the midfield area, Fred and Van der Beek are the ones that are almost like United. Yes, these are two players who are unlikely to get as much game time as they want. I'm not saying McTominay would, but McTominay's also got the advantage of being able to play in a couple of different positions as well. So I just wonder whether United are a little bit more reluctant to do the McTominay deal, hence probably pricing him much, much higher than maybe West Ham would be prepared to pay. But that's not to say it's not going to happen, because West Ham are definitely interested. They're likely to push further, but they're still keeping an eye on a load of other situations there.
Makes sense. We'll have to Keep tuning to Sky Sports for all your updates. I'm sure you'll give them us as and when they come in. You mentioned Johnny Evans there, who is obviously on this very, very short-term deal, like it was only for pre-season. What's the latest that? Can you see that being extended? Because, listen, I love Johnny Evans. I think he's a great player. I think he did okay-ish in pre-season. I don't think he did anything where you go, oh, we've got to sign him. But he could be an option, especially with all his experience.
So this pre-season deal actually goes into the new season somehow. I think I'm told that he's got 2 weeks left of this contract that he signed.
Right.
Now, I think after those 2 weeks, I think that is when Manchester United will review the situation. And I think a couple of things will come into play. Number one, how they think Johnny Evans has done. Every time Erik ten Hag speaks about Johnny Evans, he's always eulogizing about his leadership qualities, and he's a player that knows the club, and he's a player who loves the club, and they wouldn't have brought him in if they didn't think he could do a job, particularly with some of the younger players, because that was the number one priority. But then you started hearing about, well, actually, he's going to be involved in pre-season, and that's when you sort of thought, well, hold on, there's a potential to get a deal done here. And then the central defensive situation as well. If we have a situation where Maguire does leave and he does go to West Ham or another club, then United will want to reinforce in that area. Now, there's lots of talk about Todibo that United are looking at that as a possible arrival in central defence. I'm just wondering the cost of the player, whether that would be prohibitive, and also whether he would be told that he'd go straight into the team, or whether he would be maybe backup to Lisandro and Rafael Varane, if that is going to continue to be Erik ten Hag's first choice central defensive partnership. But I'm sure Erik ten Hag will want competition around all areas of the pitch and not worry about whether players are worried about whether they're going to start or not, which is what a big club like United should be looking to do. But I think the Johnny Evans one is very interesting because of the situation that he's in, and because I'm told they're going to review that situation after those 2 weeks are done. It seems to me that it would be a no-brainer, simply because of what he knows about the club, and he would be happy to be that player who would come in and act as, a reserve to and a backup to the first choice central defenders. And what a backup that would be if he can stay fit. I think you speak to every Leicester City fan that I've spoken to, they truly believe that if Johnny Evans had stayed fit last season, they would not be in the Championship right now, because he's got such organisational skills, such leadership qualities that they missed throughout the whole of last season, when for the majority of it, he was out injured.
Fair enough. I mean, we all love Johnny Evans. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that one. And like you say, there's a couple of weeks there we can find out. Just moving on to the goalkeeper situation. Forest, I think, have just got brought in the kid, is it Matt Turner from Arsenal. They've been heavily linked with Dean Henderson. Do you think that transfer they've done affects their sort of position when it comes to Dean Henderson? Are they still pursuing Dean Henderson? Because that would seem like an obvious one to me anyway, because he was there on loan, he did well to his injury, and they've obviously got a big interest in him. Yeah,
so the information we have is that Nottingham Forest want 2 goalkeepers, and the 2 goalkeepers they want are Matt Turner. He's now effectively done his medical. I think we're expecting an announcement that he'll move from Arsenal to Nottingham Forest at some point today. Dean Henderson has always been the number one choice. Now, the deal that's under discussion just now is a little bit complicated because of the injury that Dean Henderson suffered last season. So the deal that Nottingham Forest want to do is a loan with an obligation to buy Dean Henderson. The issue and the point under discussion just now, because we understand that personal terms won't be a problem. We understand Forest want to do the deal. We understand United want to do the deal. And we understand Dean Henderson wants to go back to Nottingham Forest. However, what is under discussion, among a few other details as well, but primarily, I think, is the number of games that would trigger the obligation. So Manchester United would want that number of games to be as few as possible, so that once he completes, say, I'm just throwing a figure out there, say he completes 5 games. That's it. The obligation is there. You need to pay 20 to 25 million pounds or whatever obligation fee they've agreed. However, we think that Nottingham Forest want that obligation trigger to be much more. They want a larger number of games because if you remember, he did so well for them last season until January when he suffered a season-ending injury. It was that really bad thigh injury that he suffered. He had surgery on it in May, and now all the information that I have is that he is recovering well and close to full fitness. But you can understand what Nottingham Forest are thinking here, because they don't want to be in a position where if he does come and he joins and the obligation price is triggered really, really early and that there's some sort of recurrence of that injury, then, you know, he could be out for another long, long period of time. So I think that's the big factor that's under discussion just now. You can understand it from both sides, because Manchester United want to do a deal because Andre Onana is there at the club now, and Forest want to do a deal because they want to actually bring in Henderson as their number one. Matt Turner has been brought in as their number two. They want Henderson to come in as their number one, but they want a fully fit and a degree of certainty that Henderson is going to remain fully fit, Dean Henderson, to come to Nottingham Forest. Now, if that deal was to be completed, then it's my understanding that United would actually go in for another goalkeeper, because remember, Nathan Bishop actually left the club last week. And so they've got Andre Onana, they've got Heaton and Kovar as well. So there are three goalkeepers there, but I think that they want to increase the competition in that area. Now, we heard lots of talk about a player called Zion Suzuki earlier on in this transfer window. The information we have now is that there were talks that took place. There was potentially a deal that could have been done, and there was a deal to be done. But for Suzuki, he's only 20. He said he's got one cap, I think, for Japan just now. He wants some sort of guarantee of regular football in this year of all years, particularly because there's an Olympic Games next year. And he wants to be the goalkeeper for in Paris for Japan at the Olympic Games. And if he was to come to United, as long as Andre Onana is fit, he's not going to get the regular football that he wants. So as it stands, he's going to stay at Urara Red Diamonds. But there's also talk, and there might have even been done, of a loan deal to a Belgian club, Sint Truiden, I think the club is called, where he would still get regular football ahead of those Olympic Games. The keepers that United are looking at, they're doing due diligence on various keepers if this Dean Henderson deal comes to fruition. One of them, I'm told, is the Fenerbahce keeper, Altay Bayindir. He's one that they're definitely looking at, but that would come into play if and when Henderson was to move to Forest.
Fair enough. So we'll have to keep tabs on that and keep an eye on that. Yeah, I saw that Suzuki looks like he could be heading elsewhere. Just finally, let's get on to your favourite topic, everyone's favourite topic, the takeover. It seems like every time I talk to you, we go, what's happening with takeover? And it's a pretty similar situation that we don't know, or there's not much happening at the minute. I mean, it's been, I'm trying to do the maths here, is it 9 months since the strategic alternative statement by the Glazers? Last time I checked, they're still the owners. At one point, it looked like it was going to be Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Then it looked like it was going to be Sheikh Jassim. Now it just looks like, nothing's happening at the minute. What's the latest on this, and how frustrating is this for people involved in Manchester United and the club not to know what's going on? I'm sure it'd be very frustrating the way you're talking and asking that question. I'm sure you probably reflect the mood of a lot of Manchester United fans, because when all of this takeover talk started, there was even a hope. God, could they get this done before the January transfer window? They could get that done. We could bring in a number of players, was what the United fans were saying to me. But then once it transpired, right, it's not going to happen in January. At least it will all be done and dusted, so Eric Ten Hag can have a real proper go in the summer transfer window. As we record this, 8th of August, a little over 3 weeks to go in this transfer window, and no sign that this takeover is going to happen at this stage. So I don't think any kind of takeover is going to happen to influence any kind of spending in this transfer window. It's ongoing, and you know what? It's a frustration for United fans. I mean,
Eric Ten Hag won't say it publicly, whether it's a frustration to him. I always go back to the news conference he did, his final one of the season after the FA Cup final, when he was, asked the question, is there going to be a plan A if there is a takeover for transfers, or a plan B if there isn't a takeover ahead of the transfer window? And his answer was consistent. Neither. I have a plan.
Right.
There is one plan. And, whatever happens, and, we might not ever know whether there was going to be a different approach in this transfer window had there been a takeover. But Eric Ten Hag and Manchester United will probably always publicly say, whether there was a takeover or not, my first choices were Mason Mount, Andre Onana, and Rasmus Højlund. That's what they will say publicly, whether they had a takeover or not. We can talk until we're blue and say, if there was a takeover, they would have got Harry Kane.
Yeah.
But all the noises from Tottenham, regardless of how much money Man United would have been prepared to pay for Harry Kane, they weren't going to sell to a Premier League rival. And that's come to fruition just now. And he might not even go to Bayern Munich the way it's going just at the moment, which opens up the door for potentially United to maybe, get him for no money at all next summer. But, Man United might have moved on by then. Who knows what's going to happen? Season's a long time. So, I mean, look, by this time next summer, let's see if the takeover is done. I hope, if I'm still talking to you on this podcast, Jay, that come next summer, we're not going to say, Dharmesh, what's the latest on the takeover? It hasn't been much of an update. It's been, you're going to have that meme, from Titanic. It's been 84 years.
Yeah, honestly. We'll just replay this video next summer. Dharmesh, will save us both a job. We'll just click this up. We'll just press play again every summer. It'll be an ongoing thing. We'll just have this where we both sat here and I'm asking you the question and you're going, we're still waiting. Yeah, it is incredibly frustrating. But as always, appreciate your honesty. Appreciate you filling us in on all those transfers. Actually, part of me is a little bit relieved, to be honest with you, this window, because we're sat here talking more about outgoings than incomings. We seem to have got certainly the brunt of our business done, as you said at the beginning of this interview, and that's the most important thing. A goalkeeper.
I think they learned a lot of lessons, Jay, from last season, from last summer, because if you remember, I mean, the name that still sends chills is Frankie De Jong, and I was saying his name every single day.
You weren't alone.
United was so focused on trying to get him that, they got in Malacia, they got Lisandro Martinez, and they got in Christian Eriksen, and a lot of people were saying that at least two of those three signings in Eriksen and Malacia, those were the ones that maybe you could wait till the end of the window once you get the main business done. And the main business came at the end of the window when Antony and Casemiro came. And, United probably overpaid for both of those players because they waited till the end of the window, and selling clubs suddenly think, well, you're desperate now.
Yeah,
we could have got Antony for much cheaper at the start of the window, but because the focus was on De Jong for so long, and they must have been getting so much encouragement from both parties, that the player and the club, that this deal could be done, because why would you spend that long trying to get it over? But look, they've learned those lessons this time, and I think they've been, quite public in saying that, ahead of the start of the season, the three players that they wanted to bring in, they've got in already.
Completely, yeah. De Jong was a saga, wasn't it, that went on all summer, and there was bids accepted and Barcelona ready to do a deal, and De Jong wants to come, and then it just sort of petered out and obviously didn't happen. Hopefully Manchester United can learn some more lessons going into the season as well. Always great chatting to you, Dharmesh. As always, we'll pick up with you again. We're going to chat to you again before the window ends, because keep getting updates from you, so it's much appreciated. Thanks for coming on the channel. This has been the Tier 1 Transfer Podcast with me, Jay Motty, and Dharmesh Sheth from Sky. Don't forget to hit like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.